Tata Motors, it's a company that evokes a lot of emotion.
I hear two stories of Tata Motors, that Tata culture that one speaks of, and a lot of them are really very proud about. And then once in a while, when things go wrong, you hear about the bureaucratic setup that is there.
Quality has always been a moving target for Tata Motors. They've got to a certain standard, but again, the game is moving forward.
At its lowest point, Tata Motors actually as a group company, including commercial vehicle and Jaguar Land Rover, posted a loss of over 10,000 crore in a year. And from 10,000 crore in a year, in the last financial year, company posted a profit of over 27,000 crore.
This is the interesting part about Tata Motors. They come close to the brink in kind of desperation of tying up joint ventures, doing something, giving the company away. And then suddenly, as if there's some divine intervention, it has to remain independent, and they never look back. Hello and welcome to Deep Drive, our weekly podcast powered by Kotak Mahindra Prime. Now, this is a very special episode because it's a topic, a subject that's dear to everyone's heart. It's a topic a lot of y'all have been wanting us to talk about. In fact, it's not a topic, it is a company. And that company is Tata Motors. We are going to be talking about the company right since when it was founded in 1945 to the present day. I'm Hormazd Sorabjee.
Hi, I'm Ketan Thakkar. Hormazd, what a fabulous storied history and how the company has transformed the automotive industry over decades. Let's get into how this entire transformation took place right from 40s.
I mean, absolutely. I think, one has to first say that Tata Motors, it's a company that evokes a lot of emotions. I think I would like to say it's got a heart. It's human, which means a lot of flaws, a lot of emotions. It's not as cold and calculated as, say, Maruti, which is a machine. While Maruti is a machine, I think Tata Motors is a lot more human in that sense. And of course, it's very special because it's homegrown. And what a fantastic story. I mean, we've seen how it is performing today and really punching above its weight and, really competing with, it's shown global car makers a bloodied nose in many ways. Of course, Mahindra is also there. We can't ignore that fact as well. But I think Tata Motors, an amazing history. And really, I think its roots go back to the group's basic ethos of just nation building. And I think 1945, it was Tata Electric and Locomotive Company. I think at that time, the need was to build railways, and it was pre-independence, 1945. And clearly, I think that was the focus. But I think that first step of getting into transport or let's say the auto sector, the automobile sector, we know came with trucks. 1954, Telco tied up with Daimler-Benz.
Right.
And it was a 15-year kind of financial and technical collaboration in which Tata Motors really benefited. And one has to say that even Daimler as a partner was phenomenal, very open to giving them technology, and Tata absorbed it like a sponge.
Absolutely.
Like, throughout Tata Motors history, there have been very strong people at the top historically, and each one has given their contribution, forged a certain direction for the company. At that time, it was Suman Molgaonkar. Really his main focus was on building the technical capabilities of Telco at that time. And really, that's what he did. He kind of, if you see it, he wanted to make Telco as self-sufficient in engineering as possible. A lot of restrictions at that time. Don't forget, right. This was way before the country had opened up to outside investment. You couldn't buy technology easily. So really, it was this kind of, how do I say, as I say, necessity is the mother of invention, a very cliched phrase, but very true of Tata Motors.
And this is the era, Hormazd, of 50s to 70s?
Yeah, 50s, absolutely. Yeah. So the collaboration with Daimler lasted from 1954 to 69.
Right.
I think they say there was a little bit of a falling out because Tata made its own engine, which is a copy of the Daimler engine. And then they wanted to export to markets where Daimler already was there. So that's when the association completely ended. But what's interesting is that Daimler had a share, a very small share, around 5 odd percent
Right.
in Tata Motors, I think right up till 2010.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think it was, they even had a certain share within the company. So really very close association. And I think it's because of that association, the only car joint venture they had was in 1994 with Mercedes. Again, that didn't go down too well for various reasons. It clearly didn't work for both partners. Mercedes at that time got the older version of the E-Class, the 124, which didn't work out well. And clearly the volume projection wasn't quite what people thought it was. So
Tata Motors made vehicle. It was a what, joint venture or partnership? What was it? What was the alliance about?
So I think at that time, yes, it was transfer of technology
Right.
at that time for the trucks. So they got the technology from Daimler. And I think the true test of how strong they were from an engineering point of view was in the mid 80s when, the kind of industry was opening up and you had these Japanese companies coming in, Swaraj Mazda, DCM Toyota, Allwin Nissan, Aicher Mitsubishi, all of them, all the Japanese coming into the LCV market. And you had the Tata 407,
Yes,
which
indeed.
just wiped them out. Amazing. What a story it is.
Phenomenal.
Homegrown company with a homegrown product. And I think that really is a kind of, how do I say, a lesson which repeats again and again. And, foreign multinationals just don't seem to learn from the fact that what Indians want is at the end of the day, peace of mind, low cost of maintenance, especially in the commercial vehicle sector.
Absolutely.
I think what Tata Motors had was a service station every 200-300 kilometers.
Absolutely.
That's really what made the 407, kind of beat all of them. It was that peace of mind. It wasn't a technological better product. It was fairly reliable. It was, very, very affordable. So all those strengths of Tata Motors, which we have now, were even present then. So I think really it was the way they kind of decimated the Japanese LCV makers in the mid 80s, which was really a huge success story. And again, it was really Suman Mulgaonkar at the forefront over there. Very interesting, he didn't believe in small cars. In fact, interestingly, he was on the Maruti board.
Oh.
And when they decided to go for a small car, he resigned. I think he had a different view. And then we saw the first steps of getting into the passenger side, which was a pickup at that point,
Right.
with a homegrown 2-liter diesel engine, which really at the time was the best that there was. You had at that time Mahindra, which were really super crude. And really they couldn't compete. And the technological gap at that point between Tata and Mahindra was absolutely massive. So it's really because of, the kind of, how do I say, the impact of the Daimler partnership from the 50s that built a certain base engineering capability, and Mulgaonkar's push to really, give work on R&D, invest in R&D. You had the ERC, Engineering and Research Center, which was established back then, which really was really the cradle, a lot of products coming out of there, a lot of homegrown products. So I think that's where it was. And I think then, of course, you had something like the Tata Sumo.
Right.
Which to me in the mid 90s was really Tata showing what it could do. You had the Mahindra Armada. It made the Armada look completely prehistoric. Though the Armada had a Peugeot engine and then later a Peugeot gearbox, Tata's engine was far superior. It was smoother, it was more efficient, more refined, and the Sumo was actually a runaway success. It just smashed the Armada and everything it had on multiple fronts. Then, of course, Mahindra came back with the Bolero, which had and then you had Toyota coming with the Qualis. Of course, that changed the game in that sector altogether, because I think one thing which Tata lacked, which Toyota could bank on, and even bring in an outdated product like the Qualis, was quality and reliability.
Yes.
That has been a kind of a moving target for Tata Motors throughout, which we'll talk about later in this podcast. Even, I'm saying even 30 years on, they haven't quite nailed that. Quality has always been a moving target for Tata Motors. They've got to a certain standard, but again, the game is moving forward. And now, as we know, in this age of EVs where software is so critical, it's becoming a big issue, again, which we'll talk about. So, Ketan, I think, it's been a fascinating story of the way it started with a very strong engineering base and foundation, laid basically by Sumant Mulgaonkar. And don't forget, we've had in the past all the kind of big bosses of Tata Motors, all the Tatas themselves,
Right.
starting from JRD, who love cars.
Yes.
In fact, not many know JRD even raced a Bugatti on Worley Seaface.
Wow.
And won and set a record over there. Can you imagine racing on Worley Seaface?
Oh, wow.
So this was, of course, ages back. I think it was in the 30s or 40s or something like that.
Amazing.
And then, of course, Ratan Tata, which again, his legacy, I think, is probably what has defined the company, what has taken the company to completely new heights, what has taken the company from what was fundamentally a truck maker, and utility to a full-blown, I would say, global company, because it was him who acquired a GLR.
Absolutely. It's been a fascinating journey from, I think, what people fondly like to call telco to Tata Motors. And that actually started with Mr. Ratan Tata.
That's right. Actually, telco became Tata Engineering.
Okay.
And then I think Tata Engineering was renamed, I think 2002, 2003 to Tata Motors.
Right.
So you're right. I think, it was right now, it was Tata Engineering for a long time as well.
Absolutely.
So because it was so strong on engineering, and then Tata Motors, because by then, they'd got full swing into the passenger car. I think Indica was launched in 98, which really was a turning point. In fact, it's very interesting that Sajjan Jindal, it's a lovely bite which people like to use. He wants MG to be the Maruti moment. Well, that's nice to say, but the person who actually did that was Ratan Tata.
Absolutely.
Because the Indica was an indigenous Maruti moment.
Absolutely.
Because you see, with the Indica, he built again a complete supplier base, which was TACO, multiple body styles on one platform. And that one car kind of gave birth to an entire car company.
Indeed.
And so I think, if there was anyone who kind of did a second Maruti moment, it was Ratan Tata with the Indica.
And what is phenomenal for me, Hormazd, when I look back at their, at least as far as I've started covering the sector, right from Safari, Sierra, Sub-4-meter, Indigo, then Indigo XL, the Indigo Marina, then the Nano. I mean, this company actually, in a way, has been a category creator. And it goes way back from 90s, isn't it? I mean,
that's right.
It's phenomenal as to, it also speaks about Mr. Tata as to how he saw a company to be global and category creating company.
So what I can say about Mr. Tata, and we've done it on his podcast, a couple of things. Firstly, he was an absolute visionary. I mean, he saw things people didn't see. I mean, and that was one. Secondly, he had guts, to get into the small car business, to get into the car business just after India had opened up. Don't forget, the industry was completely delicensed in 93. He started talking to wanting to build a small car. And I think we've said this story before and we'll say it again. His one decision to go to India at that time to kind of, design the Indica, because what was done by the local ERC, to be honest, it didn't have that sense of global design. So it was quite a dabba which they had produced.
Yeah.
I mean, it was Ratan Tata who just tore that up, went to India. At that time, paid 72 crores, which was quite a lot. And then, the whole tooling was another 260 crores, a lot of money in those days. But he had the belief, he had the conviction that you make a good looking car. And he had articulated his vision that he wanted a car, which was the size of a Zen, with the internal space of an Ambassador and the price of a Maruti 800.
Wow.
So really that was the vision and that's what he went for. And don't forget, at that time, you really didn't have any diesel cars in the small car segment.
Yes.
There were no diesel at all. Maruti was all petrol at that point. They didn't have diesel technology. In fact, the Zen diesel, which I think was a reaction to the Tata Indica, was brought in. And the fact is, when the Indica was launched, it shook the industry up. There's no two ways about it. And Maruti, I remember at that time, slashed the price of the 800 the day the Indica was launched. So clearly, I think, that vision to kind of, let's say, produce a car like that. And, of course, the Indica also has had its hiccups. Frankly, when it started off, a lot of quality issues.
Yes.
Sales went completely down. to the point where Ratan Tata actually thought of, hiving off the division. And he met at that time, Fritz Henderson of GM in Shanghai to kind of discuss that. It never went through because, they've always come close to the brink and then pulled back from that. So finally, they got their act together with the Indica V2, which really was a turnaround for the Indica. And then since then, the company hasn't looked back. But, again, quality is a problem. And I remember Ratan Tata saying that he was haunted by the words of a former colleague or who worked for him. Rajiv Dubey was the president of the division, who said that, the problem is the mindset, because basically the passenger car division is essentially the truck division with a passenger car division bolted onto it, the Tata. So the whole mindset was, not towards that ultimate quality refinement, the kind of B2C approach that, was needed at that time.
Yeah.
And of course, with that kind of ethos, and don't forget, it's hard to change. Tata Motors is a company, it's got such deep history. And legacy and tradition that it's like a big elephant, which really is very, very hard to become very nimble. But over the years, it has become.
Right.
And we've seen them pull out, some amazing success stories. And clearly, I think Indica was, to me, really the most... the defining moment for Tata Motors, because without Indica, you wouldn't have had a car company, you wouldn't have had JLR as a result, because that gave them the confidence to get JLR. Who knows what the company would have been if, they hadn't launched Indica.
Now, it's phenomenal as to how, to me, what differentiated Tata Motors was every possible segment, there were different categories created. And it showed India the first diesel. It showed India the first sub 4 meter. They had the XL. Some interesting stories, Hormazd, would you have with regards to some of these models, say Safari, Sierra? Because, these were actually the models that really defined Tata Motors of the year.
That's right. So I think the initial lot, what they call bridge products, basically the Estate and the Sierra, hugely influenced by, cars like the Chevy, Bronco, Trailblazer, Mercedes, of course, because you could see that in the front. The Estate, Tata Estate was quite a copy of that, because don't forget, Mulkanko was hugely influenced by Mercedes at the time. But, I think as a company just setting out, you obviously kind of look for inspiration from the top manufacturers at the time. So that was quite natural. Again, as I said, a lot of quality issues at that time. Really, I remember going on the Himalayan rally in Tata Sierra, and really a lot of issues over there. In fact, the problem with the Sierra, it had an issue of the timing belt slipping off the pulley, and when that happens, all your valves hit the cylinder and the engine is basically gone. And we just got back with just the timing belt just a millimeter away from slipping off. So we had issues, but managed to do the whole recce of the Himalayan rally at that point. And but again, what really what we saw of Tata Motors, some of its strengths right at that time, was the phenomenal ride quality.
Absolutely.
Sumo, Sierra, Estate, for the time, ride quality far better than what, let's say, a Mahindra had. Armadas, as I said, were horrible to drive, antiquated. They really felt like very agrarian. And but what's interesting, Ketan, is I think Tata Motors, which had such a kind of edge in the, at that time, no SUVs, I would say UVs with the Sumo, such an edge over there. I think it took its eye off the ball with the Indica. And of course, Safari was also there, which became quite iconic. Safari everyone loved. And honestly, whatever people say about this Safari, it's got nothing to do with the old Safari. Got no DNA of it at all except the name. It's been a good marketing thing, having the same names and getting media to compare the old and the new Safari when there's absolutely nothing in common except the name. But so Safari was, I think Safari was the real icon, one of the most iconic Tata products yet, because very aspirational at the time, very spacious. It competed with the Scorpio, which was around at that time, much bigger. So I think it had that. And again, certain things that defined Tata Motors at that time was the ride quality and the interior space.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, Ratan Tata was quite tall,
Yes.
so it had to be spacious in all rows.
Right.
So I think here we were seeing the kind of attributes of Tata Motors, which we see right now in most all their cars coming through. But coming back, where I think they took their eye off the ball is on the SUV space, because with the focus on the Indica, the derivatives,
Yeah.
Mahindra started catching up.
Absolutely.
And that's when you saw the rise of the Scorpio with better engines, overall, better reliability than the Safari. And it's quite interesting that when you saw the price points at the end, Safari more expensive than the Scorpio. And then at the end of the Safari's life cycle, the Scorpio was more expensive. So clearly, they lost out over there.
Yeah.
So I think they could have led the SUV race
Right.
at that point.
Yeah.
But, I think
But it was
cars,
a different India, isn't it? I mean, India was asking for many compact cars. Maruti.
it was a compact car market. Exactly. It was a compact car market. I think the company went where they saw the demand, where they saw the growth. There were no compact SUVs. So I think out of all the derivatives they made, they never made a compact SUV derivative on the Indica. It came much, much later on the Nexon.
Right.
So I think the SUV market hadn't really developed. Perception of SUVs always was that they were crude, they were not very user-friendly,
Yeah.
not as convenient and simple to drive as hatchbacks. Hatchbacks were ruling the roost by Maruti, and that's where, the volume was. That's where Tata Motors wanted to go. Hyundai was also there, and that's really where the action was. But again, very innovative also. I think, Tata Motors has been very innovative. They invented the compact sedan segment.
Yes.
With the Indigo CS. I think 2008 it was launched.
Right.
And then they had an XL version. Who would have thought that? But of course, a luxury Indigo was not going to fly, because I think, there was too much at odds with what you had. You had the length, you had a table, but just the fit was just too crude. And even in terms of brand image, it wouldn't fly as a luxury car.
Right. And then we had this iconic moment of 1 lakh rupee car, Nano. What was your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think, honestly, a great concept. Ratan Tata's brilliant vision again. But again, I think, I'll be honest, a lot of things were done on emotion to make it at 1 lakh. It was not going to be profitable at all. So I think, one has to say that the passenger car division, though I think it's done a lot of intangibles for Tata Motors in terms of brand, in terms of image, as I said, giving it the confidence to get JLR. It's in a way been a passion project.
Yeah.
And really in terms of financials, never been in a strong wicket. And don't forget that everything is it was kind of masked in the overall, let's say, CV sector, the commercial vehicle, division.
Which was a behemoth.
That was a real cash cow. And, even then later JLR. So really it was, I would say, the pet of the pet division of the group.
Yeah.
And in that sense, there wasn't too much accountability with the passenger car division. That's all changed right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the new guard, which have totally professionalized it. But again, a Nano coming to it, I think a great concept. But I think it's really had its own issues in terms of a relocation of the plant. And I think, that's really been a car that should have been. But I think it was let down not just by one thing, but several things. Firstly, I think no one really believed in it other than Ratan Tata.
Yeah.
You needed someone operationally to really want it to work. I think also, it was not a profitable product. So again, people, if were dispassionate about it, you wouldn't really prioritize pushing out too many numbers of that, because the more you produce, the more you lose. But I think, the whole idea was to kind of get people into the Tata Motors family. And of course, I think the most noble vision is get people off bikes into that.
Absolutely.
Didn't quite happen. I think, I think the gap between a bike and that was still pretty big. There was the running cost issue as well. And even as a product, it was a bit too crude. And, really, initially without power steering, it was quite heavy to drive despite being such a light car. But again, internal space was phenomenal. And really, this was Indian innovation at its best. It was more about pocket science than rocket science, which is what he had said. So because it really showed, our strengths in building something very frugal and at that price, which really, I think, blew the whole world away. So I think, and if anything, it inspired so many others to kind of follow. I think, again, in an earlier podcast, we talked about how Carlos Ghosn said he was so impressed with the Nano, and that's what inspired him to do the Quid.
Absolutely. To me, Hormazd, that 5 years from 2007 to 2012, in a way, were like a very defining year. During those days, we saw the Nano, we saw the acquisition of Jaguar Land Rover, and then we saw Tata Motors really wanting to move to the next level. But, they were spread too thin, right from a 1 lakh rupee car to a priced iconic possession of Jaguar Land Rover.
And don't forget, you had the Aria in between, which, to be honest, was a flop. I think it was overpriced because, again, and I think I remember writing an editorial in it that however good the car is, finally, at that time, the Tata badge just didn't have the strength to command that price.
Absolutely.
Which was more than an Innova.
Absolutely.
At that point. So, and it was an MPV. So clearly, I think, there were a lot of misses along the way as well. We had the Vista also, which was quite interesting because it was an all new platform. It wasn't just a derivative of the Indica.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of investment went to that. The whole thinking was that car should, be exported. I think at that time, and in fact, I think the company's gone backwards. Exports was quite something. You had the Indica in Europe, in smaller markets, Malta, Spain, Italy. You even had it as a Rover in the UK. Now, whether it did well or not was, a different issue. It didn't do too well. But the fact is, there was this ambition to go into global markets, which is not there right now.
Absolutely.
Or not yet there right now. So I think, again, that is Ratan Tata's vision. He wanted to be global. He wanted to go into markets like Europe. Always there at the Geneva show, showing, at a global platform. And in that sense, I think everything he thought of was, you just couldn't fault. It was amazing. It just sometimes, he wasn't an operational guy, so I think, he was the head of the group at that time. And clearly, to get down into that detail, I think it was left to a lot of people. And I think that also frustrated him that, it really didn't happen the way he wanted it to. But of course, I think, again, when you are operational, you are thinking of the bottom line all the time.
Absolutely.
And I think that pressure is also there, especially all these are publicly listed companies. So I think there were a lot of challenges which the passenger division has felt along the way.
Was JLR the defining moment in that era? Because that kind of gave Tata Motors that global appeal and the global reach and the global presence, isn't it?
I think so. I think, just acquiring JLR was absolutely a defining moment. I think initially Tata only wanted Land Rover, but the two had to go together, so there was no choice. And I think that really was something which really gave people a lot of confidence in the group as a whole that, they could acquire these two jewels.
Yeah.
And look what a fantastic job they've done of it, which Ford could never do. Because for Ford, it was just another
brand.
Yeah. I mean, for Tata Motors, this was their crown, and this is something that, was even bigger than Tata Motors itself.
Absolutely.
And so really, I think, the kind of focus, the kind of attention, the kind of love, the group could give to JLR was what made the difference.
Absolutely. And a different story of Tata Motors are under different chairmen, isn't it? Then we saw the era of Cyrus Mistry.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think, very short era and unfortunate what happened. But I can say this, I don't think we've seen an intensity of product development in those short 4 years. It's been unprecedented that we saw in Cyrus Mistry's reign. He was the head of the group and he was operational, into the nitty gritty, understood timelines, made things happen fast. And if you see, Ketan, even today, every Tata product has a bit of Cyrus in it.
Absolutely.
And all the success stories, be it Punch, be it Nexon, It's been signed off in his time. So it just shows you also the kind of long lead time these projects take in the auto business. Nothing happens overnight. Lead times are huge, and then to see the benefits of products comes after 4 or 5 years. The curve wasn't signed off in his time, but again, the curve is a derivative of the Nexon. And I think the first new car we'll see will be the Sierra, which wasn't signed off by him. A lot of expectation from that. But again, Harrier, Safari, all of them. In fact, the Safari, the third row, the spacious third row is actually thanks to him, because I remember Pratap telling me that Cyrus, he's quite a big guy. He wanted to make sure that the third row would be comfortable for someone like him as well.
Right.
Hexa was completely his baby. That was his passion project. He really worked hard. A lot of people say that the Hexa today has been the best Tata product there is in terms of, luxury, refinement, quality, that sort of thing. It was a very heavy car, body on frame, so had some challenges. But just the way it turned out, a lot of people liked. Again, they tried to, keep the Hexa going, but again, which we'll come to, it just didn't make business sense. And I think, that sometimes, things which didn't make business sense, they still went ahead with in the past, which is not there right now. But again, in those short 4 years, I think what Cyrus did was really amazing. Again, maybe financials still was an issue. I think, and I think we have to talk about the cost structure of Tata Motors. It's generally been totally out of whack. People think that it's, very frugal and cost efficient. It is in certain ways, but the efficiencies are just not there. Productivity, efficiency, Tata Motors really not there. I mean, take a plant like Sanand, for example, not a very efficient plant because it was built in a hurry, and you just had to get it going because people sometimes ignored certain costs. Could they have made it more frugally? They probably could have, but just the kind of pressure to put it up fast and start producing cars, clearly, it's had an impact on the efficiency of the plant. So I think overall efficiency, productivity has been a historic problem with Tata Motors, and it still is. And I think, while they can be very frugal on the engineering part, I think, when it comes to production, sourcing, that sort of thing, they're really not as good as they should be.
No, I hear two stories of Tata Motors, that Tata culture that one speaks of, and a lot of them are really very proud about. And then once in a while, when things go wrong, you hear about the bureaucratic setup that is there, and sometimes that slows the organization down. And probably the difficult times the company was consistently losing money, it made matters worse, and that kind of is the reason why we keep hearing about the quality issues at Tata Motors. It keeps going on and on. What was that? That was a very, during Cyrus's time, we also saw the entry of Guenter Butschek, the former CEO of Airbus, really a key infusion during the time when Tata Motors was wanting to get into the next stage and leaving behind the remains of Nano and what the future could be. Why don't you look at that era? And
I remember meeting Guenter, I think it was 2014 Geneva Motor Show, and he just become the MD at that time, and I think he was looking at panel gaps on the car and just taking the case of everyone over there. And I just stepped back a bit, didn't want to kind of be a part of that. But I think Guenter was really a strong force. Amazing guy with unbelievable energy. In fact, I think just when we interviewed him, Ketan, he just wouldn't stop. I mean, he was just like a train, but he was fantastic, full of energy. I think I would rate Guenter as possibly one of the best MDs Tata Motors had, because what he got to the company was a certain process. Now, don't forget, so he had come from the auto industry himself. He was there in China, so he knew all the processes, the systems, and basically people couldn't BS him. So there was a delay. He knew why the delay was. You couldn't. So I think he brought that rigor. He brought that structure. He brought an overall process and proper project management at that time. At that time, if you see, Mahindra was a company that was just slipping in terms of their launches and all. The tendency is there, just that the launches, kind of slip into 1 month, into the next month. But I think Guenter brought that rigor, and I think that was amazing. And that's why I think also the cadence of launches which you saw, one after another, as I said, never seen in the history of Tata Motors. I mean, just look at all the products that came out fatafat. There was Nexon, there was Altroz, there was Tigor, Tiago, Altroz, Punch, all of these in a short span of time.
Right.
So I think that was quite amazing what he had done. And I'm glad that he's back on the board right now. I don't know what role he'll play. He may not be operational. But I think, Guenter, his contribution to the company, I think, I would say has been fantastic.
Hormazd, apart from bringing in systems processes, I do remember Guenter talking about that there is a need to rationalize the vehicle architectures. For years, we had the X0s, X1s, and there were so many other platforms that were there. And he wanted to kind of come out with 2 different vehicle architectures. What did you think of that era? Because that, in a way, also kind of gave sharper direction to where Tata Motors was moving.
Yeah, it did. I think, I remember at a press conference, Guenter talking fundamentally of 2 platforms, which was the X4 and then the Omega platform.
Alpha
and Omega, the 2 platforms, which on principle sounded great. And all the new models would then kind of gravitate towards the new platform, which of course was better for crash. And, while we're talking about crash, we cannot, let's say, overemphasize Tata's push towards safety. I mean, a lot of it has been marketing, which you said before, but there's no doubt by tom-tomming their 5-star results, their safety, it has made people very aware of safety. And that's a great thing. So people are looking at safety as one of the factors to buy a car. And I think that really we have to hand to Tata Motors. Of course, it took that as a competitive advantage to kind of compensate for other weaknesses, and brilliantly done. Of course, now everyone's doing 5 stars, so that advantage no longer is there, which we spoke about.
Hygiene now.
Yeah, it's become hygiene. But again, coming back to the platforms, 2 platforms at that time. But I think, company needed money, to kind of gravitate to have that. And I think at that time, company was having a lot of issues. And I think, obviously, the hemorrhaging had to stop. You had to put a hold on certain investments. So I think that never went through at that time, what the plan was. But I think more than that, Ketan, I think the big flaw even till today is a big hole in the middle of these 2 platforms. And that actually is the sweet spot where Tata isn't. And that's the Creta segment. Absolutely. Neither of those platforms can produce what I would say a credible Creta fighter. We'll see what the Sierra does. I mean, I think there's a lot of promise with that car. I think it's going to be really a game changer for Tata Motors. Looking at the design, the spec, the engine options, everything. They're throwing everything they can into it. I think the Curve, bit of a disappointment. It was just seen as a Nexon plus
extension,
and that body style people haven't really taken to. So really, I think, great expectations for the Curve, but didn't do well. But I think a lot of expectations on the Sierra. But again, coming back to the platform, that is still on what is an X4 platform stretched to the max. And I think we've said this before, there's something called L113, which is a certain dimension, which you're really limited by.
Right.
Because that limits your wheel arch size. You can't go to much bigger wheels. And if you do, it'll impinge on, the passenger room. So I think they do need a platform. And, I think that's what they've been, been wanting for a long time.
Yeah. And Hormazd, since they could not do it on their own, they did dabble with alliances, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, to get this elusive Creta fighters, it's interesting that Tata Motors were going to tie up with a Chinese company, not 1, but 2.
Oh, wow.
So the first one they talked to was Chery. And they nearly were looking at it. The plan was to rebadge a Tiggo 4. The Chery Tiggo 4, which was based on Chery's T17 platform.
Okay.
So that was the plan. And they were just going to rebadge it to get a quick and easy Creta fighter. Can you imagine a Chery rebadged a Tata? But yes, that's what the plan was, the Tiggo 4. But then what happened was, I think they upgraded, and I'm not sure on this, so it's just what I've heard. So I know it's a bit of speculation. They went to the next generation platform because the model change was happening, the life cycle change, which was, I think, the T19.
Right.
But it was worse in crash.
Oh.
So it would not have got the the right, crash ratings, which was very important to Tata at that time. And I think it was based on that project kind of fell through.
It was called Blackbird, right?
Yeah, Blackbird. That's right. Blackbird was and then again the whole thing started again with Geely.
Right.
So, and at Geely, they went really far ahead. I think they were about to sign also. Then COVID happened, and then Galwan happened, and then things didn't happen. But I think even in our interview, Chandra has alluded to the fact that, they were open to others to get this Creta fighters, So, still not there. But I think what we know, and we'll talk about later, is that they are looking at another platform which will fill this segment.
Absolutely.
Because honestly, you look at the Creta volumes, 15, 17,000, everyone wants to nibble something from that. And it's not just the volumes, it's a profitable segment as well.
Absolutely.
So it's really, a cash cow. So that's what everyone wants.
An ideal upgrade option where millions of Indians are.
And interesting, even Mahindra doesn't have a credible Creta fighter. So many people don't.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting over there that, the segment has been elusive and, no one's thought of it.
Right. During that time, we saw the entry of Mr. N. Chandrasekharan, the latter part of Guenter's presence in India. He played a significant role in changing the way people look at Tata Motors.
I think, to be honest, one could have been a bit skeptical. Chandra is not a car guy the way Mr. Tata was, or even Cyrus was. Cyrus was a hardcore car guy. He loved it, But I think sometimes that emotion overrules business sense in a way.
Right.
I think, looking at what he's done, he's totally professionalized the company. He's brought a dispassionate view to it. He's in a way turned it around, in terms of financially, because that's really what you need to do. Because I think all said and done, as people within the company say that honestly the passenger vehicle, and I've heard this from senior people in the company, say that was a spoiled child. Yes. So you don't kind of reprimand it, you let it get away with what it wants to do, including kind of delayed timelines, costs, that sort of thing. You ignore it. But when Chandra came in, he was a strict parent, and I think he's turned it around. I think the combination of him and Mr. Balaji on the finance side, the CFO, I think they've worked wonders. But I will also say that I'd like to bring in Shailesh Chandra also in this era. So this era of Chandra and Chandra,
yes,
which we like to call. I think we cannot, overemphasize the role Shailesh has played, because really it's with his arrival also the company just turned around. Let's say really it was at its worst in 2019.
Yes.
I don't know what the numbers were, but it's really pretty about 12,000, 13,000 units a month.
Yes.
Something like that. Really very low.
About 1.6 lakh per annum.
Exactly. Nothing for a size of this company. But I think when he came in and COVID, I think the way Shailesh dealt, with the whole, let's say, the tough COVID period, the semiconductor crisis showed a little bit of flexibility, agility, to keep the production going. More than that, I think the way he motivated the dealers who were really at an all-time low at that time and galvanized the whole company into really performing and, let's say, motivated everyone. I think Shailesh's contribution, can't be, as I said, overemphasized. And he won a Man of the Year as well.
Yes.
Autocar Pro Man of the Year, and I think rightfully so. So really, I think, it's really at the end of the day, if you see any company, it's the people which drive them. It's not machines which make cars. It's people that make cars and people which drive success. Absolutely. So I think this era as well, I think with Mr. N. Chandrasekharan at the top, I think it's, I don't know, Ketan, you tell me, I think, I think from a financial point of view, it's been just phenomenal, isn't it? Yeah.
No, it's phenomenal, Hormazd. And we saw for years, given the fact that the consolidated financials always, hid the losses that passenger vehicle business was on. And one of the key things that Mr. N. Chandrasekharan along with Mr. Balaji did was...
this whole demerger and all is everything to kind of,
First, it was segregation of financials so that you really know where the money is being put. So we actually started seeing... immediately after COVID, that segregated financial of passenger vehicle business and commercial vehicle business. Almost at its slowest point, Tata Motors actually as a group company, including commercial vehicle and Jaguar Land Rover, posted a loss of over 10,000 crore in a year. And from 10,000 crore in a year, in the last financial year, company posted a profit of over 27,000 crore. Wow. And this, we are talking about all companies put together. And what more, the passenger vehicle business has turned around significantly. The volumes of the company company. Like we mentioned, 1.6 lakh was the volume somewhere just before COVID. It more than tripled. We are talking about Tata Motors doing 500,000 vehicles over the last few years.
It's been an amazing turnaround in these last couple of years. Absolutely. And in fact, I think our cover with Mr. Chandrasekhar called him the transformer. I think we've covered all this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what is phenomenal, Hormazd, that you alluded to the partnership with Geely just before COVID, just before the lockdown. I believe it was 21st of March, 22nd of March. Tata Motors, in fact, came out and said that they were okay to sell stake in its passenger vehicle business.
Exactly. So they were going to sell some stake to Geely. I don't know what the stake was, and I don't know what the story is, but I think at that time, Geely also threw a googly and wanted stake in the parent company, which Tata Motors as well. Obviously, that's not going to be acceptable. So some issues over there. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but it was very, very close, and it was a stake sale. And, largely for technology, which is what they wanted. And I can tell you that Shailesh, I think, I believe maybe even some of the engineering guys, they all went to Geely, drove their cars around their high-speed track. They had phenomenal platforms. Of course, the Creta Fighter was there, and direct injection petrol engines, all that. So, I think it was, again, almost a done deal, and they got saved. And I think again, this is the interesting part about Tata Motors. They come close to the brink in kind of desperation of tying up joint ventures, doing something, giving the company away, and then suddenly, as if there's some divine intervention,
it has to be an independent.
It has to remain independent. And they never look back. And I think right now, I think that they're going to, they're just at an all-time high. Well, maybe not at an all-time high. We'll talk about their current future, which again is looking challenging. Yeah. But I think clearly, they're never going to be as desperate as they were at that point. Yeah.
We saw conversations with Peugeot. We saw conversations with Volkswagen.
Exactly, a conversation with Volkswagen. I just think, Tata Motors' DNA is to be independent. You can have these conversations. The only joint venture, as I said, was with Mercedes. But what we've not talked about, another joint venture which has worked quite well, is with Fiat and now Stellantis. And that's interesting because why that joint venture has lasted, because there's something in the original contract or agreement which makes it very difficult or prohibitively expensive for either partner to exit. So they are just absolutely wedded. They can't do anything about it. And frankly, I think, that's also, it was great to see John Elkann, who's from the family at Stellantis at Ratan Tata's 28th December on his birthday after he passed away. They had a tribute for him, and John Elkann had made it a point to come down. So, a really good relationship over the years with Fiat, FCA, now Stellantis. Who knows, that could lead to something in the future.
Yes, indeed, Hormazd. And the one of the biggest highlight, if you ask me, was that immediately after COVID, when the market opened up, the effort that you were talking about that Guenter and the team had put in place by having B-line of products, we actually saw the forever new range, which is what Tata Motors announced just before the COVID, somewhere in the month of Jan. And as soon as the market opened up, that was the only company to have freshest portfolio. And from that time on, from say October 2020 to 2023, it was a dream run. I mean, Tata Motors was everywhere, and everyone was wondering what is really the reason behind this phenomenal rise. And again, you mentioned about how they smartly managed the semiconductor crisis, how the mature portfolio at that point in time really helped, the fresh portfolio really helped. And also during the phase, we also saw the rise of EVs, and that's where
I think we have to attribute that to Mr. Chandrasekhar, and he is the person who kind of put Tata ahead in the race. And I remember that part of that interview we had with him, and where he wanted the EVs to come much faster. I think Guenter told him 4 years. He said, I wanted less than a year. We'll just play that clip for you.
I called Guenter and then said, we've got to build an electric car. He said 4 years. I said, I'm going to tell you something. You may think I'm a fool or I have no idea, but I said I need it in less than a year. He said, it doesn't happen in auto industry. I said, that is what we have to challenge.
And I think this is what happens when you come from the outside. You have a fresh perspective. Absolutely. Within Tata Motors, people say there was always a feeling of a lack of self-confidence. But when you have an outside perspective like, Chandra had there, he could see, wow, we can do all this, and frankly, he comes from a software industry where things move lightning fast. I think, it was this kind of, let's say, new outlook, which I think galvanized the company at this point. Of course, I think there are going to be challenges. I think what we have seen is that there's been no real new product launch from the Punch onwards. Well, you had the Curve, but again, I call that an extension of the Nexon. But no brand new nameplate. The next one will be the Sierra, which I think will slip into 26. So between Punch, which was I think late 21, and 26, that's a big gap. So I think they've kind of lost out over there. But having said that, there's a limit to how much you can invest.
Absolutely.
So I think they were investing in capacity.
Absolutely.
Sanand, they've got hold of Sanand to the Ford plant. So I think, where do you put your money? And, that's the whole thing. There's a finite amount of resources. Either you can do it in capex, in huge product development, or in manufacturing capacity. And I think that's where it was.
So, Hormazd, financially, if you were to see from a minus 10,000 crore to a 27,000 crore, which actually was higher last year in FY24 to 32,000 crore, it's just not about turning around the operation, but creating capacity for the future. Tata Motors today has a capacity of close to 1 million. They are about 500,000 at this point in time. I mean, they can
now they can focus on getting the products to fill it.
Absolutely. And plus, it's a different ball game, operating at about 25,000 units per month with a country as vast as India and with a product complexity that ranges from a hatchback to a large SUV. It's not easy. And that rise from 1.7 lakh to 500,000 happened in a quick time of 2.5, 3 years. And for an organization, it really takes time to assimilate that kind of, volume, that kind of the challenges that your dealership, your vendor base throws up. Now that they've matured over the last couple of years were the years of consolidation. They're getting their house in order, and we've heard it from the top management about how they're trying to address the dealership issue, the quality issue, the software issue.
Yeah.
And now is the time that you're going to see a barrage. We recently heard Mr. Shailesh Chandra telling investors and also media about, investing 35,000 crore till the end of the decade.
No, I mean, for Tata Motors, India is everything.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing about it. They have to invest. I think, they just have to kind of, let's say even right now, I would say that, they've come off their peak.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
A lot of challenges. So I think, but I think, it's all cyclical.
Absolutely. And it takes a while. I mean, we've seen there are only two brands who've managed to sell 500,000 consistently over a period of time, and that is Maruti Suzuki and Hyundai.
Yeah.
And for Tata Motors to again sustain that kind of volume and have multiple nameplates.
Yeah, and even now Mahindra's gotten into
yes,
that.
Even Mahindra's getting into that space now.
Yeah.
So we're seeing two Indian brands actually really catering to the passenger vehicle market, accounting for almost 25% share. So now they're getting into that big league, and now they are getting used to that. And now with they're flushed with funds. Hormazd, they had a debt of about 60,000 crore. Last financial year, they cleared all their debt and they were net cash.
And Ketan, talking about funds, I think another thing which Mr. Chandrasekharan has done, I mean, to raise money from the market, TPG rise, valuation, I think, of 9 billion. I think that again was a real masterstroke and kind of confidence the market has in Tata Motors, which was unheard of before. Okay. So I think clearly you don't need to go to another partner for let's say, cash at least, which again was, one of the reasons to partner with someone to share the cost of development and the risk. You're getting it from the market. And, so that's...
I remember when the announcement came, I was at Chennai airport. I was returning from an event and I saw a valuation of $9 billion and we were in 2023. I said just about 18 months back, the company was really looking at selling stake and it is raising money.
Yeah.
And at a 9.1 billion kind of a valuation, that was quite insane.
Yeah.
And clearly the early effort and the push from Mr. Chandrasekharan to get EVs on ground with ICE converted EVs. Of course, we've spoken about whether that's the right move or no, but it has really helped them and putting that, that they are the leading player and they still continue to lead the market. So it was phenomenal, Hormazd.
Yeah.
But along with this growth, Hormazd, there are a series of issues that have crept up. What are the challenges in your assessment? I mean, we've often spoken about the quality of service, quality of products.
I think that is there. I think let's talk about service and quality. Definitely an issue. The amount of let's say mails we get on problems with Tata owners. I mean, I have to say this myself. We were running a long-term curve EV, and it just conked. My wife was in it. She panicked. It just stopped in the middle of nowhere. You don't expect that at all. You can't accept that. Luckily, we simple thing of good jugaad, just disconnected the battery terminal and put it back like a reboot, and it started again. But this is unacceptable. I think Tata Motors know this is a big problem they have. I think what's happened is that the rate at which sales have grown, the sales network has expanded, but they haven't invested the same amount in the service network. But from what I understand, they realize this, and they're fixing it. That's a good thing. They are fixing it. So I think we should see an improvement in that. But service reliability is still an issue. Software is still an issue. And all the goodwill they've got out of their 5-star cars, now you talk about that, people are hitting them for the service and reliability. So really, that's really not good, and they need to improve on that. I think the other weakness is powertrain, because sense I get is, their focus on EVs, and really they got the first mover advantage. And whatever you say, they're still the number one EV player with so many people in the market. Despite, let's say facing stiff competition, I think they took their eye off the ball on the ICE side. Now, if you look at it, their 2-liter diesel, it's not theirs, though right now they've acquired the rights to do it. So that's a very good move. And on the big capacity petrols, nothing right now. So right. Safari, Harrier are 100% diesel. That's not a good thing, especially when diesel is a risk going forward. Right. Though it's that is more a political and perception thing than actual technical facts. It is still they're quite clean BS6 engines, and so they don't have a petrol engine there. They're working on a 1.5. They're taking their own sweet time over it. I hear it's going to be really good. In fact, they've said they want to get it right, so there's been a little delays on that. I think they're even looking at a 1.5 naturally aspirated petrol, which is a smart thing to do. So looking at, they want one fuel efficient engine the way the Brezza is. That could be that the everyday engine for an everyday car. So that's a smart strategy. Looking at a naturally aspirated, no one does that. Everyone goes to turbos and GDI and that sort of thing, which pushes up cost and also increases fuel consumption. So they're thinking right. Only thing is not come out fast enough. So I think they've been weak on the engine side. They hopefully now they look at that. And then finally, I think, the next phase, Ketan, looking at what they're going to do, because all the 35,000 crores, also one, to be honest, do they have the engineering chops to pull all this off? Because I'll be very honest, right now, the sense one gets in terms of perception and technology, Mahindra has raced ahead of them. Absolutely. Even with their BEVs, they've just shaken Tata Motors up, and really, I would like to imagine they got even maybe a little complacent with the success of cars like the Nexon and the Punch. So I think really they have to up their game on the engineering side. That's what I feel. Obviously, they might need to partner. Software is one issue where, everyone is struggling. So this transitionary phase where we go to full software-defined vehicles, I think is going to be quite painful for a lot of manufacturers. But I think what is good is Tata Motors knows that, these are challenges. So really they're under a lot of pressure right now. As we've seen, sales have come off the peak for various reasons. I don't think the Curve EV is a very competitive car, frankly. And, but I think now we've got the Sierra coming and some future products. Okay, then let's spill the beans on what's happening in the future. I think we might even see an all-new platform or two platforms from Tata Motors, because finally they have to move away from these platforms. They're getting obsolete. The reason is that you can't put the latest electronics onto them or retrofit them. And that Creta fighter, that size where you have the platform which can take a credible Creta size vehicle, that also I think is something they must be looking at.
Yes, Hormazd, that's right. We're still trying to unravel what the architectures will be. In the past, they've spoken about EMA architecture of Jaguar Land Rover. Clearly, it's too expensive. So they're going to be borrowing certain parts of that EMA architecture for the Avinya family for future. That has got delayed a bit. On the software front, you mentioned Hormazd. They've partnered this company called Disse, which is going to be actually defining their future SDVs.
Yeah, surprise, no surprise, it's Chinese.
Yes, it is Chinese. So clearly, I mean, they're going with a proven name there who've delivered projects globally. So Disse is going to be helping them with their SDVs of the future, while they've recently announced their tidal architecture, which is designed and developed in-house. But they are getting ready for the next wave. And apart from that, Shailesh Chandra told media as well as the investors that there will be at least 7 new nameplates. 7 new nameplates. So one is definitely the Sierra. Then there will be 2 Avinyas, the Avinya First Concept and the Avinya X. And then there will be 2 more ICE brands and 2 more EV brands. Now, there are multiple project names floating around Hormazd. If I were to give you a cadence of what one can expect from Tata Motors in the next 2 to 3 years, to begin with, we are likely to see an upgraded Punch, a significant facelift of Punch coming in the month of October this year. The much awaited, or rather a long awaited, the EV on Altroz, they internally call it the Ascot, that is lined up. The new generation of Nexon. Now, the question is, what architecture will that be? X1 platform, it has been going on from Vista days.
I think they will allow it one more generation is what I feel. There's no real, let's say, I don't think they need to, they will continue with, exactly.
Change there. So we have the new generation of new generation of Nexon, called the Garud internally, which is likely, say, somewhere in the month of September of 2026. It is going to have all 3 powertrains, petrol, diesel, and CNG. And then we should also have the EV version of Nexon coming out. Then we're going to have 2 projects, Hormazd, called as the Taurus and Leo.
These are the Harrier and Safari
new gens. Yes.
I think these should be on a new platform from what I understand, because the D8 platform has got a lot of limitations.
Right.
And from what I understand is 4-wheel drive.
Yes, that's correct, Hormazd.
D8 can't take 4-wheel drive with ICE.
Right.
It can take it with EVs, as we've seen. They already have done that.
Right.
So I get a sense this will be a new platform and could even, spawn vehicles a size below. In fact, Ketan, I wouldn't be surprised if this was a flexible platform. Everyone's moving towards that. Mahindra have already done it. We've announced it with the NFA. So I think it's a logical thing to do. And maybe they will even move to, Ethernet for their ENE architecture. So I think that's what it is. But, I think, again, they're a little behind in the race. They need to now catch up because, as I said, no really massive new products in this 4-year period. Yeah. That's where they've lost out.
Yes. So, internally they call it the bigger, bolder and better Harrier and Safari. So one can expect, the size, shape getting better. And you mentioned about how the existing Safari is nothing like what the previous generation Safari was. So I think with the new Safari that they're working on, they'll probably try and take some, inspiration from the previous generation that actually had
the OG.
Yes, the OG. They had the halo impact. So, that's the Taurus and Leo. And there is this interesting new concept or project internally called as the Scarlet. Now, friends tell me it is going to be yet another sub-4-meter SUV. And while the benchmark product is not yet known, but what is going around is the fact that it is going to be a boxy-looking SUV. Now, some refer to it as probably a Thar rival or a Jimny rival. One doesn't know, but it is going to be a monocoque is what we know. We know that.
I think body on frame is gone right now.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's going to be developing a new body on frame, and Tata Motors doesn't have body on frame.
Right.
So I don't see any body on. Doesn't make sense now with the way Cafe is coming. It's too heavy.
Right.
I think if you had body on frame, you can continue with it the way Toyota is doing with the Innova for as long as they can. That's also going to be discontinued. And Mahindra, of course, will continue with body on frame, which has been a huge part of their success.
Right.
So but I don't think they would develop a fresh, let's say kind of range of products on body on frame.
Right. Yeah, Hormazd, digging further, some say that probably it could be a shorter version of Sierra also. But the heartening thing is that they want to ensure that they're going to be there in the core of the market, the 10 to 20 lakh elusive segment. They've done well when it comes to the sub 12 lakh market with the Nexon and the Punch, and they have options in the about 20 lakh bracket. So this is the space where they need to get a lot more products. And then there are
And they even have the engine, the 1.5 engine,
Yes.
which I see a lot of derivatives.
yes,
Maybe 2-power outputs for the turbo, the GDI,
right,
and a naturally aspirated.
Right.
So that will cover a huge span of products.
absolutely.
And they'll have the 1.2 and the 2-liter diesel, which is now in their portfolio. And they've got the 1.5 diesel also.
So bit by bit, they're actually bridging the portfolio.
Right.
And there are two more EVs, Hormazd. I hear the names are called Kuno and Terra. We're still trying to decode what exactly they are, but they are likely to be again a compact EVs. And Shailesh Chandra recently told media guys that his strategy is to have two models in every segment: entry, mid, and high. So clearly, they are trying to bridge the gap. They are looking at where the future growth is going to come from, and they have their hands full. And their stated target is 18 to 20% market share by the end of the decade, 35,000 crore, and 7 new nameplates, Hormazd.
That's right. I mean, you can have the money, you can have the ambition. My only thing is, do you have the bandwidth?
Yeah.
And as I said, the engineering chops are really important, which, to pull all this off. Don't forget, you've got global OEMs also, especially the Koreans and Maruti also, really not taking their foot off the pedal. And you've got Mahindra, which in all fairness, even perception-wise, they've gone ahead in the technology race. But I think Tata Motors is a company that is so super resilient. It somehow always fights back. And as I said, we've seen them come off their peak right now. But I think, it's just a matter of time before they get back. And I think more than that, they've got their house in order. I think the main thing done,
That has been the biggest story.
financial sound footing. That's what it's all about. And I think with that, you can only grow from there.
Absolutely, Hormazd. Net cash got flushed with fund, private equity money, the existing business generating money, and they are unlocking value. And the existing business is refueling its own business. And there is a long-term target of even making 10% EBITDA on the existing portfolio. So clearly, they've got their house in order, the profitability in place, the capacity in place. Now the products are going to come. And I just go back to what they did over so many decades of finding those sweet spots and creating those segment creators. I just hope the future models that they're coming out will, they'll be able to address that.
Absolutely. I think, it's this is one company it's so homegrown, and it's been, if you look at their history, remarkable history, founded even before independence, though not quite as a passenger vehicle or even a truck maker at that point. We talked about it earlier in our podcast, and we do hope you've liked it. It's been rather long. So I think maybe the best way to enjoy it is download it and hear it on a long drive, going to work or when you're stuck in traffic. So other than YouTube, which you can catch us at 11 a.m. You can also catch us on other podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Prime. Thanks for watching.